we have a lot of people coming in, but then the fall off's even more. So then they leave debt that has to be paid and policies that aren't that great because there's no service, no one servicing the policy. So I think that's part of it because, social media and these multi-level marketing companies that are based on recruiting are recruiting a lot of those young people that think they can just get rich quick.
Alrighty, so we're live somewhere, everywhere, maybe nowhere, but that's okay as well. We talk to ourselves all the time, quietly, on a Friday afternoon. We have Adam with us. We have Nick here today. We have a special guest, Wayne Daniel, who decided to take a few minutes and spend it with us as we discuss, has the phone killed, slaughtered, murdered, or just barely committed manslaughter into the final expense industry? Appreciate you guys all joining me this afternoon. What do you think, Adam? Has the phone at least committed some degree of manslaughter into final expense?
There's a possibility. I mean, it's funny because I didn't even really think about that until you brought that up the other day. And I was like, man, what else really changed since 2020? I mean, COVID brought in the phone sales. And like we talked about, I mean, a lot of these products out there, they were put together prior to COVID. And they weren't really set up really for telesales when it came to like the internal stuff with the rates and underwriting and the methods of writing business. So I think there's a good possibility that it did play maybe a negative effect on persistency issues with a lot of the different carriers out there.
Maybe. We have 30 some minutes today to discuss it. I'm excited to see what each of your opinions are on the issue. Interestingly enough, this topic became our most watched video, and in an industry wrought with change, maybe even more change to come, we thought it would be great to have our crossover episode and add a guest for it. So Nick, do you feel like now that we've discussed this into the 4th episode, that potentially the phone has committed 3rd-degree manslaughter, 1st-degree murder, unintentional homicide? What exactly is happening?
I feel like we're using the phone as sort of clickbait here. Because people really like talking about telesales, both positively and negatively. I don't think the phone, I don't think Final Expense has been killed. Let's just start there. But I think Final Expense is still thriving and a really good industry and probably actually getting better, kind of. Like it's kind of a better position to be in if you're coming in right now. Maybe not as a brand new agent, but man, if you're established, if you've got some cash flow and you've got the ability to make sales and you're not having to figure stuff out and you're making money already, like I think there's going to be a little bit of a hiccup and things are going to get a little bit difficult for a very short period of time. And then it's going to be a much better market for a while because there are other things outside of the final expense industry that are changing that are going to help. And we can talk about those things later if you'd like. But so no, I don't think Final Expense is dead. And also, I don't think it's telesales' fault, even if it is. I think telesales changed things in ways that people did not predict. I think the boom in telesales changed things in ways that people did not predict. The ability for independent agents to do telesales changed things in a way that people did not predict. And I think that has caused us a handful of companies that were not super duper with it in the first place to have problems that they were not expecting. But I don't think I don't think it's just telesales, right? Like I think back to when KSKJ exited, right? And in the life insurance, the insurance, life, and everything in between group, we talked a little bit in a thread there about how KSKJ exiting and firing their number one IMO, like just wholesale, just like canceling everybody's contracts, was sort of a weird reaction. And somebody who worked for Prosperity responded in that and responded and said, gee, it's just so hard to make money in the final expense space for an insurance carrier. And that was an immediate like alarm bells going off, ringing in my ears. Like, oh my God, somebody who is like working on the final expense side for a major final expense carrier is saying like,
Mhm.
gee whiz, it's hard to make money. And then like agreed that firing the IMO was dumb and they should have just removed the product. And now look at what seems to be maybe happening, like nothing official, but potentially happening. It's an interesting thing. I feel like face-to-face agents are very quick to blame call centers,
Mhm.
and there are some bad actor call centers. Um, Interestingly enough, call center agents are really quick to blame face-to-face agents. So I don't know. I think it's a more complicated situation than any of us really have perspective on, except for possibly Wayne. He might actually have a better perspective on this. So
Well said. Well said. Well, we're live. I don't know where we're live at. If you're watching us live, share it so other people can see it. StreamYard doesn't make going live all that easy, but we figured going live would be more fun to do this afternoon. So if you're watching us right now, you and your cat or the other two people watching, make sure you share that information with others so we can increase the engagement. Wayne, you've got an interesting perspective from both the FMO level and a very intricate relationship with the carrier level. What are your thoughts? Has phone killed final expense, or is final expense just correcting itself back to where it was pre-COVID?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. So I agree with Adam and Nick. So COVID is what sparked more people going into telesales, right? We can't go in the field, so we're going to jump on the phone. Before COVID, if you guys remember, and I think all of you were selling before COVID, there were carriers that wouldn't allow telesales at all. And then there were certain carriers that would only allow it if you had a certain approval. So we have a direct contract with a carrier that was that way where, face to face, we could contract anyone. But if we wanted to do telesales only, they had to be a call center. We had to do a site visit. We had to do a marketing plan and have basically a full write-up, pictures of the facility, everything to do telesales, because they knew, or at least they felt, that persistency isn't as good unless you have controls in place. So a lot of these people doing telesales, they have verifiers, right, that come on the phone first, that are non-licensed people, just to kind of make sure the interest is there. Then they obviously have the agents making the sale. And they have even people that are following up when payments are missed and things like that. So I think when you do telesales that way, it works at a high level. But then COVID comes along, right? And carrier see business drop. And now all of a sudden, Wayne Daniel can do telesales with any carrier he wants sitting out of his house with no checks and balances, no management structure. Recording the call sometimes. Maybe I'm sending an e-signature. Who knows what's happening? I really don't know how to do telesales. Nobody's really training me, but, I can't go in the field, so I'm just going to figure it out. And there was a lot of that. And there's still a lot of people that are just the single agents sitting at home. And that's the hard part for carriers to determine, telesales is all encompassing. So is it call center telesales where, there's a true management structure and hierarchy and checks and balances in place to make sure the business is good? Because I think we'll all agree, and I think telesales people would agree as well, persistency is better when you're face-to-face with that client making a sale. You're going to build that rapport. That's a better sale than someone on the phone that someone's never met, and they're just rolling through the leads and making the sales. It's proven fact that the premium's higher when you're face-to-face than when you're on the phone. It's a proven fact that persistency is a little bit better if you don't have those checks and balances. So I think that's the big thing. Everybody turned telesales on. Nobody knew how to really do it, except for the people that were doing it before COVID. So all the new people in the market didn't know what they were doing. And now a lot of that business is falling off the books. And so carriers are pulling back, just like they did. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the mortgage and automobile crisis and all this stuff, right? It's cyclical. Carriers, I want business. And then it's like, well, and you guys know how it works. You reserve for face amount, right? For future losses. So, they're all watching that as well. You've got to have a certain amount of business coming on the books to keep the numbers in line. But then if you have too much, right, and you don't have the capital to reserve for it, then you kind of get in trouble. And then if you don't have enough, you get in trouble. So finding that balance of good persistence business is challenging for a carrier. And then I think Nick brought it up about saying they're not profitable. Final expense is very profitable by the time you get to the year 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Mm-hmm. So carriers with the heap commission structure and the way that final expense is structured, the first 2 years are pretty much a wash for the carrier. And what I mean by that is they don't make anything. right? So a wash as far as they're out the capital, and that's why they take claims very seriously in the first couple of years, and the contestability period's there, and at the end of the day, that's what's going to kill a carrier when they get into this business. The first couple of years is what's going to determine how much success that they have in that market. And there's a carrier that just exited. They were doing a lot of business through a couple of distribution channels, and they were doing a lot of stuff that they probably shouldn't have been doing. And when you underwrite and you take cases that you shouldn't take, and you don't price for it, right? So then that's where you get in trouble, right? You can't have a price buster and take people with congestive heart failure and COPD and all these other health conditions. You just can't do it. You can't have a guaranteed issue product with super great rates and make it. You just, and people try to do it, and that's the ones that fall out. And, it's got to be priced correctly and conservatively to make it.
Let's unpack that for a minute, because there's a philosophy with many agents, and it's not a wrong philosophy. It's that they have to sell the cheapest rate every single time. They have to sell the cheapest product every single time. And if they don't, they're defaming the god of final expense. And realistically, I remember speaking to a carrier rep a long time ago, and he said, I could design a product for you with whatever compensation you wanted. You just may never sell it, because compensation has a lot to do with the pricing, and so does the risk involved. And not to say you can't price something super competitively, but what happened to that fraternal in Pittsburgh a few years ago? I think we're talking about all these carriers that are disappearing now. We witnessed a carrier exit the market and hasn't paid anybody a penny since. Like, what are your thoughts on that situation? Because that's almost very similar to what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, that's as far as not paying the agents contractually, that's a totally separate issue. But the reason they're not paying the agents is because it didn't perform, because they had great rates and they were taking health conditions and doing the things that they, in my opinion, shouldn't have done. They blame it on, I think they blamed it on some kind of commission system issue, and, but they resolved that and they still didn't pay it. So they knew it wasn't profitable. Like I said, paying, not paying, that's a totally separate issue. But from just looking at the plan perspective and what we were selling, yeah, everybody was selling it. It was a great product for an agent because the price was great. They would take some health conditions and, but it can't survive. You just can't survive having the best price. And that's where these quoters have gotten brokers in trouble, right? So back in the day, you had 3 or 4 companies. You went to their website to quote based on what you thought, health-wise, where they fit. And now, there's so much adverse selection because you're trying to pick the best. You put all the healthy people with the guy that's $1 cheaper, and then maybe putting somebody that's sick with someone that's $2 more. Well, that one that's $2 more can't survive because they're getting all the sick people. So, you just got to realize that 50 cents, $1, $2 to the client, they don't know it's not going to hurt anything. You have to send a good mix of business to the carrier for them to survive. And that's why we try to teach our agents to have 3 or 4 carriers that are their main carriers based on what state they live in or where they're going to sell. And you need to give them a good mix of business.
Yeah, I think I was speaking to another carrier rep recently, and he noticed that their product was only being selected for standard rate business. So they're designing a product that is literally just standard rate, standard or graded. Like, they realized that they were just a COPD carrier, just a COPD carrier with direct express, just a diabetic neuropathy carrier. Like, they weren't getting any healthy mix to that block outside of their other distribution. So, all right, let's design a product that if that's all we're going to get, we're going to price for it. But Nick, do you think a lot of these companies should just hire somebody, pay them $250,000 a year that has 10 years in the field, and give them some authority so they know what the heck they're doing?
Well, I mean, some of the carriers do, right? I mean, they don't probably pay quite that much, but they then don't listen to those people. There's a carrier that hired somebody that I'm reasonably good friends with, and it was a carrier that said that they wanted to get a bunch of business and said that they wanted to do things, and they came out with maybe the best e-app that I've ever seen. And did some things to be agent friendly, but then when my friend who became their head of sales started giving them advice, they were like, no, we don't want to do those things. We're not going to do the things that you're telling us to do. And it wasn't like all underwriting stuff. It was like tell the agents how to underwrite your policy type of things. Like give them a medication list so they know what you will and won't take, so they don't submit applications that you're going to decline. You know, implement social security billing so that we can make sure that policies draft correctly the first time. Like it was not impossible stuff to do. And they were just like, nope, never going to do that. Never going to give agents a medications list. Just not going to do it. And after working for these guys for like 9 months to a year, my friend quit. He was like, I can't. It's like running my head into a brick wall. And I like that is the only one that I have like firsthand knowledge of. This is the type of thing that happens. But I'm sure this is happening other places. I do wonder, and that sorry, Chris. I do wonder if things like Insurance Toolkit, Best Plan Pro, things like that, which I have been since the first time we started recording together and doing things back in 2018, I think. I have been saying agents using underwriting software tools like that instead of actually learning how to underwrite is going to be a broadly bad thing for the industry, for individual agents and for insurance companies. And I've been saying that for years at this point.
I would argue against it. I would argue that the product increases placing the business where it's supposed to, because a part of the problem here is these carriers are getting you run an e-application, it doesn't go the way it's supposed to, so you're right with somebody else. And that process, while it seems like it's unimportant to you because you just placed it somewhere else, costs that carrier the processing fee with iPipeline, iCover, themselves, MIB, whatever. It costs them money. You didn't place anything. So that's expensive. But when you're using a tool, eventually your brain should catch up with the tool. It's not supposed to become a dependency relationship. You're at least placing the business with the proper carrier that should take that piece of business. And your IMO should be teaching you, like Wayne said, to focus on a couple different companies. But
that is absolutely how it should be. And that is absolutely how it should be. And I think that there's definitely a place for things like Toolkit, but I don't think that's how it gets used. I think the way that it gets used is agencies hire people and they say, you don't need to know anything. Here's Toolkit. Plug their information in, sell them the cheapest price carrier. And this is where you do get a bunch of adverse selection happening from people doing that. You know, they and the agencies want people to sign up with like 45 carriers, right? They want to tie these agents down and make sure that they're never going to go anywhere. And if they've got every possible carrier, they can tell the agent, you'll be able to write anybody. You'll always be able to win. And then at the same time, in the back of their heads, they know, haha, and we never need to release you and you'll never be able to go anywhere else. And I think that's real. I think that's something that's a part of this whole thing that is beyond just the telesales. I think that like I said on, I think the last thing we recorded, I think there are genuine bad actors in a lot of these spaces. And I don't think it's mostly the individual agents. And I don't really think it's mostly the insurance companies. I think it's mostly agency owners. But I think that's very real and it exists.
Let's ask an agency owner. Wade, do you feel like a question we discussed in one of our prior episodes during this time is that the broker era has also caused an issue? I think if you rewind the clock pre-COVID, 2018, maybe even a little bit further, there was a lot more flag flying, jersey wearing. I work for, which is also not legally correct.
Or
this IMO.
Right.
Yeah. And for over the course of the last several years, there's been a push on the pendulum towards more of a broker side, where you might have a guy writing business with you, writing business with Nick, writing business with me, and none of the three of us know about it until someone's like, wait a second, where's Jeff Perez? Holy shit, there's $30,000 of debt. Like, do you feel like this broker shift has also caused issues in anti-selection and carriers and products, or is that only affecting the mid-level guys like me?
No, I think you need to pick an IMO or F&O and stick with it, right? Unless they do something they shouldn't do and it's not a good fit, and then you should get released and go somewhere else. But having contracts placed all over, not only does that cause a problem at the agency level, I'm not going to give you as many resources, right? You may get a contract through me because you got it under someone that's with us, but then you ask for leads, or you ask to use our CRM, or you ask for help on something, and I'm like, you've got one contract that you place 2 deals a month with. I'm not really interested in, really do anything to help you because it's cost benefit analysis, right? If it doesn't make sense where, someone that has every contract with you. And even if they're not writing a lot, you can see there's potential there, and they're trying and they're working your system that you've put in place. That's someone that you want to help. So it's not always about the override. It's about what's the commitment of that agent to the agency owner, because a lot of agents think now that, I'm going to have 10 IMOs that I work for and everybody owes me so much, right? To make sure that I'm successful, just pick one. And that's what we do with toolkits. So to help with adverse selection, we give you a price buster, right? We give you one that's good for COPD, we make sure you could cover everything from, the best price for the healthiest person all the way down to GI. And then I cut everything else off in toolkits. They don't need to see it because that's the carriers you're going to sell. And if something changes, I feel like it's my job to watch the market and watch the states that you work in. And certainly we can have a conversation, but at the end of the day, we need to agree on what carriers you need to be successful and what system you're going to work. And then don't worry about the rest of it. Don't worry about the noise. And the agents that do that are the most successful. The ones that want to have 10 contracts with 10 IMOs and try to grab resources from everywhere, they're never going to make it, in my opinion. Because look at you guys. I mean, you guys mostly have your contracts with one person or, one IMO that you guys work with, and you use their resources, and you should.
Adam, I remember you had this, you have a question for Wayne, but I would love your perspective on it. You've got core guys that work with you, that do everything with you, and you do everything for them. But you've also encountered the individuals, the character types, not even a particular person, that I want a contract level higher than even an agent should have. And I want everything from emotional support to psychology to lead management to sales training to all of the things. And I want the smallest spread possible from you. Those kind of people are hard to work with compared to the kind of people you're working with currently that don't look at it that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just more to it than just commission levels. I mean, heck, I'm writing business with a carrier this year on a level lower than majority of my contracts. So, I mean, there's so much more to it, but you're right. I mean, I don't know. I prefer working with, like right now. Yeah, I'm working with the smaller group people, just kind of getting into the business. They're not even thinking about contract level. They're focused on getting out there and working and doing what I can to help them to make it long-term in the business. So, people that if all they're focused on just contract level, and I mean, I don't know, someone's writing a piece of business just because that's where they have their highest contract. There's so much more to it than just that. I guess a little bit off topic from what we're talking about, but not really sure exactly where you're going with that, but
that's okay.
I don't know if you have a follow-up to that or
That's okay. What did you want to ask Wayne? Because I know you had a whole list of things you wanted to throw his way today.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Wayne first if maybe you could explain like exactly like what your role is with Sika, and then from there I had a couple follow-up questions.
Sure. So we approached we started looking for a life charter that we could purchase, right, with an investment group, and we're having trouble with that. And then I approached a company that had an open charter that wasn't using in the United States. They do some business internationally, and they have a company that called Security Plan that does some debit route business. And basically, they allowed us to take a product that they already had, make some changes to it, using, kind of create an e-app with their in-house IT team, and kind of get the exclusive on a product that we sell that's just for the final expense market. So, with the superior choice, that's what we did. And so we're still just a marketer for them. I don't work for that company. I'm a marketer just like I am for any other carrier that we represent. The difference is because we help them kind of build that product out, we have kind of exclusive distribution on it. And, that's it. We want to create a product that was, we have some things coming down the road that are exciting, but for now it's a standard product that's probably middle of the road pricing, but going to take some health conditions that other carriers won't. And then a GI. So it's 0 to 85, and you're going to get an approval in the home, right? You're going to go one way or the other. Not the best price GI because, we want to stay around, So we don't want to have the best price GI because we know when you write the GI plan, right, especially with our standard plan taking the conditions that it does, you're going to be pretty sick, right? And, kind of give you an idea. We've had, I was looking this morning, product's been out a year. We've had 118 claims so far. on about 11,000 policies. So when you look at that and paying the claims they should pay and not paying the ones that they shouldn't, and so doing the right things, and that's what you want out of a carrier. And like anybody, you have challenges. And I think it was Chris talking about, why don't you hire someone from the field, and we can help them be better. A lot of these guys, and Nick's friend knows this, from working at the carrier he was talking about, but these middle level managers and even some senior managers, when you're working in a corporate environment, I'm communicating with them, but there's a board of directors, the CEO, and I'm even communicating with the CEO. But when you get everybody on board and there's a cost involved to something, in the corporate world, they have policies and procedures. They can't, with our businesses, it's just us and maybe 2 or 3 employees. If I decide to do something today, we're going to start Monday, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
They can't. And that's part of the problem is, we have this long list, and we go out 5 quarters with Seek a Life on what we're going to do, and what's coming with IT and everything else. So that's how far they look ahead on what to implement. And then we try to keep them focused on what's a priority. And, but yeah, so I've learned a lot just over the last year and a half, working with them. Cause I've never created a product before or just been a sole distributor of a product until that. So.
Okay. So yeah. And then with that, I was just kind of thinking about that too, with growth. And I mean, with that product that came out, I don't know, when was it? Like maybe August or September of last year?
We started with our internal team in June. So yeah, it's been out exactly a year. Started to bringing on other IMOs late July of last year.
Okay. And that's one thing, I notice is that, I mean, I've marketed the product, but I can't even write it. I'm in Illinois. But with that, I was just going to say, I think that it's kind of like the whole slow and steady kind of wins the race, where you're not just throwing it out there everywhere all at once, where everyone has access to it. Everybody can get out there and write it and pile up the premium. And I would assume that Sika probably has an idea of how much premium would be attainable, how much face amount would be attainable when it comes to the risk, and just not wanting to put too much risk out there all at once. And I guess that's what I'm wondering with some of these companies that are going under. Was it not that they weren't doing a lot of business? Was it more that maybe some of the IMOs were just growing so fast and bringing in so much business that maybe it was just too much for them all to attain? Did they get greedy? Maybe like they see all the business coming in and that's fine. But then when the claims are coming, then it gets a little shaky.
That's part of it. So to your point, when an insurance carrier writes a piece of business, okay. And this is where these, $1 billion investment portfolios come from. So you go write something that's maybe $100 a month to $1,200 annual premium. They pay you heat commissions on it. It's a $10,000 face amount. Well, they have to keep anywhere from 70 to 80%, depending on the state, in reserves to pay that claim, right? So it's cash that's gone. Now they get to invest it and make a return on that money. So it's not like it's just gone. But, when you run out of money, you run out of money, right? Even though you're putting it into a savings account that's earning interest, you're still using up your cash. So that's where reinsurance comes in. And when you bring reinsurance companies in, they do their own underwriting as well. So you've got them on the back of it. And I'm not speaking for Sika because they're, they do their own deal and they're a public company, and, you can look into, they do business with, but just any company in general, reinsure, they're all going to reinsure at some point just because you run out of cash. So the key is if you've put on a lot of business with your own cash, right, that you've reserved, and those claims come in higher than expected, to your point, that's where you're in trouble, because now you're going to lose your cash because you've got to pull it out of the investment account, pay the claim, right? That's what it was reserved for. And now it's gone. The reinsurance companies usually do a really good job underwriting. So that's when you see these underwriting changes. If you guys see a carrier go for 2 years or a year and a half, and then they make a change, that's what they've done. They probably brought in a reinsurance company that's looked at the risk and said, we got to tighten up here, we got to tighten up there. And that's where those changes come from, whenever they change reinsurance or get them in the first place. But that's kind of the deal is if you put on too much too fast, you don't know how it's going to perform, to your point, right? If we go put on 20 million a month and, use all of my cash in the first year, let's say I own an insurance company And then I bring in a reinsurance, but all of mine was a bad decision. Then all of my cash is gone, right? Regardless, even if all the reinsurance is good, because you've got to send them a portion of the profits now, right? So they're helping you, but they're also taking a portion of the profits. So the point is to grow. We're doing 2 to 3 million a month issue paid right now with Sika. That's a level that they told me they're comfortable with to make sure we're seeing what comes in on claims and that we're making the right decisions. So you can pivot if something's not right. And so I look at them for that. I'm not an actuary, so I want to make sure everybody knows that. And kind of how it works, but I don't know the number. No, they tell me how much I can do each month, and then we try to budget that and make sure we're bringing on the right distribution partners to get that volume, because you want to play from fraud and things like that too. So
yeah, Nick, will you be my reinsurance company?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll reinsure you. No problem. Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We'll talk after.
Awesome.
I actually, that brings up a question for me. I remember when I started around 2013, and there was large talk in the insurance industry at the time that I got started, that the problem with the insurance industry at the time was that it was aging out. Everybody was too old. Nobody wanted to become an insurance agent. There was nobody joining the ranks that were young and were going to be in the field for the long term. Anybody who was new to the insurance industry was joining in their mid 50s as like a second career or a third career. And I feel in the time that I've been in the industry, that has shifted tremendously. And that there is a large push and kind of a wave. And places like, I don't know what we can say, but there are a handful of 3-letter IMOs that have really focused on building young people and pulling them into the industry very specifically. And I think that's a large part of this wave, especially as they've gotten purchased by some of the private equity firms and have had the ability to really turn on the gas with some of those recruiting pushes. I wonder if some of this isn't just nobody was prepared for how many more agents. Telesales face-to-face doesn't matter. Just purely, there are just so many more people selling final expense now than there were in 2017, when like Wayne was saying, it takes a long time. You're looking multiple quarters out. It takes a long time to develop these products. I don't know how long the Sika product was in development before it even got released, but if these things are being designed with an expectation that there's only going to be X number of people selling it, and then the boardrooms see, oh my gosh, we can actually contract 3 times the number of agents that we thought were ever going to want to pick up this product, and they're going to sell, instead of the $1 million a month we projected, they're going to sell $10 million a month. And how many insurance companies were like, hey, that's great news, and then it all just immediately imploded in a way that they didn't expect, because I don't know. It's just something that I'm like, as you guys are talking, I'm like, is this actually maybe the bigger issue? Has the industry itself just grown too much too fast? Phone sales wise, not phone sales wise, but just.
Did millennials kill final expense? Maybe that should have been our title.
That's what I was going to. Really, Gen Z. I think we really got to kick the can down the road and blame Gen Z.
The Gen Z. But, my son's 20, so he's part of that, right? And I'll just talk about my son because I can do that, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But he's he wants to make $1 million, and he wants to make it tomorrow, right? He's not willing to. He wanted to come work in the insurance business until he found out he couldn't be me. He had to go knock on doors and sell policies for the first, 5 to 10 years and get the experience, and then do that. And he's like, oh, I thought I could just talk on the phone all day like you do. So that's the kind of stuff that they want to do. So what attracts those? Because to our agency, I very seldom get somebody brand new to the industry unless they're going on our career path. But from the brokerage standpoint, I very seldom get somebody that's just licensed. They come from a multi-level marketing type place, right, where they were there first, because those guys are showing the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, the mansions, right? And that's what these kids want. They want that, and they're telling them they can have it in 6 months if they come work with them. And it's not true. And then, they find out it's not true, and then they quit. So to Nick's point, we have a lot of people coming in, but then the fall off's even more. So then they leave debt that has to be paid and policies that aren't that great because there's no service. no one servicing the policy. So I think that's part of it, because, social media and these multi-level marketing companies that are based on recruiting are recruiting a lot of those young people that think they can just get rich quick.
Yeah. Adam, why aren't you showing your Lamborghini off more often? Like, I feel like every video you do, you should be on your Lamborghini like this.
I mean, I don't know. I just can't decide. I can't decide which fancy car that either that or my Bentley.
I just,
so I just keep them in the garage.
Just for you.
Yeah. And is it, we have one question. Maybe we can answer this live because we only have 2 minutes left. Linda asked a question in the comment section. Since we're talking about profit and loss, how do we as an industry stop agents from being able to IMO hop, and in the process of hopping, leap debt over and over and over again? Vector doesn't seem to solve this much, and it's pushing middle-level managers out, which I agree. The debt will eat me alive and eat folks like Adam and Nick way before it even gets to guys like Wayne. So what do we do as an industry to protect from those type of hoppers that are also leaving their feces in their wake?
Don't contract every single agent all over the world. I honestly.
No, and you interview them. Make sure you can add value other than the contract. If someone calls me and says, how high of a contract can you offer me? And that's your first question. It's probably not going to be a good fit. It's going to be, well, what resources do you need from me, right? Because that's how I determine. I have a certain profit margin that I want to make, right? Just like everybody that's in business. And then do you want to use my leads and our CRM and our employees? And, then we start backing down from there on what you need for support. And then we come to a number. And, at the end of the day, we're going to get to a number that we both agree on. So that shouldn't be the most important question. It should be, what are you going to do to make sure that I'm successful? How are you going to help train me? Those are the kind of things that you look for. And then, what we've done at Sika as far as putting policies and procedures in place on that, I think that every carrier should have a policy about not changing comp for 6 months if you move. So we've got it where not only do you have to have a release, but if you wait out the 6 months, even if you change IMOs with a release, you cannot increase comp for 6 months. They need to leave that IMO for the right reasons. It doesn't need to be for 5% more. If that's what they're leaving for, everybody's jumping around for 5 points. No, if they want to leave me to go to Adam, it's because Adam's going to ride in the car and train them, and that's what they need, and I can't do that. And that's the kind of stuff that people need to leave IMOs for, not just because they can get a higher percentage of comp, because that's everybody's answer to fixing their problems, right? Is 5 more points, 5 more points. What it should be 5 more sales.
Well said. Well said. Nick, I know we only have you to 12:30. Any closing thoughts before you run?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I got to bounce because I got people starting to line up in my training session, and I got to let them in. But I think for a future video topic, there is a comment in here that I would love to talk about maybe next month in the future, which is somebody saying that as a younger person, they would actually prefer lower first year commission for higher renewals. And I know that's something you and I have been talking about, Chris. So food for thought for the next time we do one of these, everybody, post in the comments what you think. Would you take lower first year commission for higher renewals? And how low would you be willing to go? Would you be willing to go to 70% if it gave you a 10% renewal? I wouldn't, but maybe you would.
Good topic, Nick.
All right.
Well thought out.
I got to bounce. See you guys. I'm sorry. I got to run.
All good. Thanks, Nick. We'll take it. We'll tease that real quickly, then we'll let it go. Adam, what are your thoughts? Or Wayne, let's go Wayne first. Wayne, did heaped commission break final expense, where everybody wants to have the highest contract with lower and lower renewals, where the desire to keep a policy on the books is almost inconsequential? Did heaped commission cause part of the problems that this industry is facing?
Absolutely. And there's carriers that have already done it. And we're even looking at what if we paid out 50, 60% more over the course of 5 years than you get currently, but we spread it out? Would that be attractive to an agent? So it's absolutely, when a carrier has to pay more commissions than the money they bring in the first year, that's always going to be, something that's a challenge for any carrier, right? Regardless of capital. So carriers are starting to look at even higher commission levels than the caps are currently, but just spreading it out over 3 to 5 years, to kind of what Nick was saying about the 10% renewal, but almost like what if you had a 30, 40% renewal, or something larger. So it was more like what you see on accident health side.
Well said. Adam, your closing thoughts. Could keep commissions help this industry where there's more initiative for the agent to keep that business on the books because they're getting paid more than $1.12 at that point in time?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact analogy. I'm probably going to screw this up, but it was something like, would you rather take like $100,000 today, or like we give you like a penny and we double that every day for 30 days or something like that? And at the end of the month, you actually have a lot more money doubling that penny. It was something like that. But I kind of look at that when we talk about like the lower comp first year and then the higher renewals. It's like, yeah, the upfront money is great, but yeah, if you can get paid a decent renewal and you're good with keeping up with your business and you're consistent with writing business over 10 years, you're going to make a heck of a lot more money than if you're just taking that large first year commission and a low renewal. So yeah, I would much rather take a lower first year comp with a pretty steady, heavy, decent, not super high, but high enough renewal that it makes sense.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah, you paid more than you would in the other plan. And I think every good agent's going to say that because you guys are established, you've got some cash flow, you can afford to do it. So I think the ones that say no to that are probably, especially if they've been in the business a long time, are probably someone you might not want to do business with long term because it's tied value of money, right? So if I can make 100%, this year versus 150% over 30, 2 years, which one would you? It just makes more sense, right? To do 75,
yep.
75. So that's the kind of stuff where it would weed out a lot of these people just looking for upfront money and people that are not keeping policies on the books, and that kills carriers too, right? Because they're waiting to year 2 to start to break even. They need policies to stick.
Yeah, I did some math on it, interestingly enough, on a heavy front-loaded contract compared to a back-loaded deal. And it's by the time you get to year 3, you're already making significantly more than you would have made on the steep contract. So it does make a significant difference. Yeah. Already on that note, we got a delivery, we got background noise, we got all kinds of noise. We're going to wrap it up right here. Wait, dear God, I appreciate you being here with us today. Adam, thanks for joining us. We'll get this posted on the channel, and we'll get this out there for public to consume. Thanks for watching.
Somebody's got a big dogs. Have a good day.
Take care. Thanks a lot.